Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at the Alt F4 League race. We're at Montreal this week. I've actually been out of the car for the last about 2 weeks. We'll talk about that here as we get started. We have a really quick light.
Here we go.
I'm actually looking down to make sure that my clutches and everything are activated because I've been out of the car for a bit. Started the heat race 5th, got a nice little jump to 4th. And then it all goes wrong right out the gate. I was very curious to see how this was going to show on the video. Unfortunately, what actually happened, and it doesn't show here at all, as I'm going, like basically right as the lights go out and I start going forward, the tracking of my VR headset just went crazy. So as I'm approaching turn 1, what I'm looking at is, imagine looking maybe 70 degrees out the left side of the car. That's what I'm looking at as I'm going forward. So it just completely threw me off. I was terrified being where I was in 5th place at the time. I didn't want to mess anybody else's race up. So I just didn't know what was going on, honestly. I just kind of hung it to the left, clearly went too deep into it. But yeah, that was going to be bad, kind of no matter how it went down, just simply based on the fact that the tracking was completely gone. So I'm honestly thankful it worked out the way that it did. I took no one out. I made no contact. I think I only got a 2x for the incident for the spin. I didn't hit a wall. I don't know. I got lucky in a lot of respects. So thankfully was able to hit the reset the heads up display or whatever on the wheel to get myself going again. And yeah, at this point, kind of took the edge off. I was super nervous coming into this race anyway. As I mentioned, I've been out of the car for about 2 weeks. My wife and I went down to the Rolex 24 at Daytona last weekend and saw that race and kind of took everything in over the last 4 days, or over those 4 days. So for me, I've truly been out of the car since, I'm trying to think of what the last race was for the F4 cars, but I was out last week. I missed road Atlanta, which is unfortunate because it's really one of my favorite tracks, but yeah, I did the 24-hour race in iRacing, had a great time with my Shake and Bake boys. I think we finished P7, had a great time, just a great experience, but really kind of burned me out. So we did the Daytona 24, then I went to the Daytona 24 in real life, phenomenal experience, but really because of that, I've been out of the car, out of iRacing, out of the sim for almost 2 weeks. So I did spend an hour or so of practice on, I think it was Tuesday before this race, just to kind of find my footing, feel confident, really just feel like I'm not a danger to other people more than anything else. But yeah, I had about an hour or so of practice, and then of course we're jumping right here to the race and get going. So I'd found some pace in practice, but nothing crazy. I was actually really surprised that I qualified P5 for the heat race, so I had a lot of nerves. I mean, that's normal for me anyway, but I think especially so given the fact that I had kind of been out of the car for about 2 weeks. So yeah, had a spin right there at the start, settling in. Think we're gonna be, I think we're somewhere around P13. I think that's gonna be accurate. Well, I guess with that incident, maybe like P12 coming around for the first lap. So at this point, kind of felt good. I just, getting the tires warmed up, settling in a little bit. Feel like I'm going to be able to catch some of the guys in front of me, but again, this is a heat race. It sets the grid for the race. So I'm just looking for, finding my footing, getting some confidence. I haven't run any official races this week, so a lot of it is just feeling comfortable around other people again. So yeah, just gonna kind of settle and see if we can make a little bit of progress before the feature race starts. I have really enjoyed racing on this track this week. This race, the heat and the feature go well. I really do feel like I find my footing and find my pace as the race goes on and as we get to the very end here. Definitely a couple places where I feel like I'm losing some speed. Hairpin is certainly one of them. Turn 1, I feel like I found pace, but it was very sketchy for me. You'll see a number of instances over both of the races where I'm, yeah, it's sketchy at best to get through turn 1 and turn 2. So there's a lot of time there to be found if you can really push it. But for me, you know, kind of balancing pushing versus trying to be consistent. I don't know why Jim was telling me about the fuel. Definitely good on the fuel here.
That lap time was 1:37.
A lot more cautious into turn 1 that time around. I think 1 because Tim was right there and I didn't want to do anything stupid. And then, you know, I think the previous time through, not nearly as clean. So, trying to find my footing again. He touches the wall there, which is going to give me a great run, but not enough. So yeah, it's one of those things where you're just trying to find your footing, trying to find confidence racing around people. And it's funny how only being out of the car for 2 weeks can kind of reset that for you. But for me, I definitely felt that this week. This is just a phenomenal track. Some of these corners are tough though. The chicanes can be very challenging. It's really the chicanes, the hairpin, and then, you know, turn 1, turn 2. That's pretty much the majority of the track, and certainly the complexity. I did want to talk a little bit about the Daytona 24. I really can't recommend that enough. If you're anywhere close to Florida, don't mind the drive or the flight. An IMSA race is just a phenomenal experience. I've never been to an F1 race. I've been to plenty of NASCAR races. But IMSA is just one of those things where the tickets were relatively inexpensive. Or actually, they were quite inexpensive, especially compared to a NASCAR race or an F1 race or anything like that. And we got 4-day tickets, which, you know, gave you access to the garage area, the infield, everything in the pre-race, to walk the grid, driver introductions, like literally everything. And it was just surreal to, you know, see those cars on that track at such a massive facility. Yeah, I can't recommend that enough. If you love motorsports, I told my wife when we were there, this whole experience felt like a love letter to motorsports. And there were just so many different things going on, from some old school cars that, you know, were on the track or in the infield, car shows going on. I mean, it was just, it was like a party, honestly. Highly recommend that. I'm sure Daytona is a little bit more of a unique experience than, you know, some of the other places they go to, but from a fan experience, to get up close to the cars, like, it's just an experience that I think everybody should have, if at all possible. And the speed and the sound of those cars, especially the new prototypes, the GTPs, it's from like from another planet. I don't know how to explain it. It's one of those things where I have video and have, you know, all of that, and it's cool and it sounds amazing, but it does literally no justice at all to being up against the wall or close to that wall at Daytona and watching those guys go by. It's just, it's wild. It's completely wild. So it looks like we're catching up some of the pack here, pulling up to Carter here in P10. Really, you know, again, I'm still a little jittery. I don't want to ruin anybody's race here, so I want to get by, but at the same time, I'm trying to kind of get a feel for racing around these guys. Again, I know it sounds silly to say, I've done a lot of iRacing in my time, but just being out of the car for 2 weeks and having focused on the GT3 car for Daytona for weeks prior to this, I don't know, little uncomfortable, not quite as dialed in as I might normally be or like to be. Have a pretty good run coming out of that chicane.
Car left.
Send it up the inside a little bit.
Hold your line.
I think
Clear left.
that is
Left
definitely
side.
a classic
Clear left.
case of
Car
comfort.
right.
You can see there I was running on a line that I clearly had not practiced. I was trying to make the overtake, definitely not trying to dive bomb, trying to get that overlap before the braking zone. But yeah, sent it a little too deep. And thankfully, you know, no incident or contact there. Clearly would have been my fault, but it's one of those things where just the comfort level is so important. Would have been nice to have had a little bit more practice, a little bit more confidence to run those sorts of lines and know, you know, even when I'm on the inside, I can brake here to make sure that I make it through and kind of all those things and not send it deep on them like that. But thankfully it worked out. Thankfully no contact. I saw Chris go off. I really wasn't sure what to expect there. It almost felt like Vettel Hamilton from a couple years ago. I think that was at Montreal. But yeah, Chris was able to rejoin safely. Looks like those guys had contact behind me. I'm not sure what happened there, but yeah, I was surprised to find myself P9, honestly, after that spin at the start of the race. I wasn't very aggressive or quick to get back on the track when that happened, frankly, because I'm looking 70 degrees out the left of the car in the VR headset in that moment. So I was literally just like completely discombobulated, trying to reset the heads-up display, make sure everything was kind of straight. But yeah, so I was surprised to make this much ground up. It honestly gave me a lot of confidence. It gave me a lot of confidence for this race to go into the feature race, knowing that I had some pace. So see where that takes us for the feature.
The leader has just done a 136.34. Looks like P1 has gone off in Senna.
So my buddy JR there is going to finish P8. I'm going to come home P9. And frankly with a lot of confidence. So I'm pretty excited to go into the feature race. I am slightly concerned about my VR headset given what just happened.
We're done.
Alright, getting set up for the feature race. Definitely feeling pretty good. Having some confidence after that the sprint race we just had. Starting P9, 40-minute race.
Fahrenheit. Okay, mate, get ready.
Really hoping that have a better start than we did previously. Pretty solid getaway. At first I thought maybe I'd have an opportunity to get down on JR here.
Car right.
Trying to keep it safe, trying to keep it smart.
Hold your line. He's still there. Right side's clear. On your clear right.
Definitely feeling feel those sometimes, those accordion effects. And then for me, I definitely, and you'll see it I think a couple times in this race, kind of struggle with if I'm not hitting my braking marks by going kind of 100% in the lap, like at what point, you know, while I'm coasting in, do I hit the brakes? Or I definitely struggle with that from time to time. Something that saw right there for sure. So first lap, 40-minute race. We are limited in the amount of fuel that we can carry, so we will be forced to have a pit stop. I was really unsure kind of going into this race, you know, how it was going to feel. 40 minutes is a long time in the car in VR. Again, it's been about 2 weeks since I've done this, so I wasn't sure, man, was this going to feel like a slog or just how it was going to feel. But a lot of action in this race. It kind of makes everything go through or go by a lot easier, a lot faster than maybe I was expecting up front. At this point, I'm just thinking we're getting through lap 1, not having any major issues, no headset tracking problems. You guys didn't get a chance to see it, but between 2 races, I'm furiously cleaning the lenses of the cameras on the headset just to make sure we don't have any issues like we'd had in the first race. Definitely have to say I've enjoyed this track this week. Haven't done a lot of racing, a lot of laps on it. Haven't had a lot of time with it necessarily, but It flows so nicely. It's definitely fun to lap. Racing's been a little bit more challenging. It is kind of tough to pass unless you get just a phenomenal exit on someone, but just lapping through, it's very satisfying when you nail some of these corners. But as you can see, and as you will see, I'm definitely left hoping that, or wishing that I was able to execute some of these corners a little bit better. Seeing the two guys in front of Jerry here battle, really trying to pick like how aggressive do I want to be. You know, with Alex and Thomas there battling, it's, you know, I need to get past JR to, you know, take advantage of what they've got going on. But yeah, I'm kind of calculating at this point, you know, where I want to go, how aggressive do I want to be. So seeing them get wide like that, JR smartly backed off a little bit, and I was not expecting that whatsoever. So things get very aggressive here very quickly. Chris is to my outside. Try not to make any stupid mistakes myself. Give him plenty of room. See Leo, our buddy, had some trouble there, unfortunately. Going into turn 3, this is definitely not a place I want to be. I feel like I have the line. Chris backs out a little bit, lets me get through. That's not a comforting feeling to be side by side going into turn 3 like that. So now we're kind of right back to where we were. I've got Alex Thomas in front, and then JR obviously right in front of us. So kind of reestablishing where things are, how we're going to try to get by. And I think at this point I'm thinking to myself, I just need to try to focus on JR and try to get an overtake done, have a nice exit on one of these corners, and try to close the gap. So I think I'm going to try to make that move here in the hairpin, see if I can get a really good exit. Yeah, nice late apex. JR goes a touch wide. Definitely feeling like this is going to be the corner to do it. I've got draft. Certainly he does as well. See if I can make the move here going into the hairpin. Definitely closing in. Gonna let him know, hey, I'm looking outside, or looking inside rather.
Still there.
JR backs out, gives me the spot. Now sights set forward. See if we can catch up with Alex and Thomas here.
P7, that's the fastest lap.
Yeah, 138.2 is pretty solid. I'll certainly take that. And then we'll dip down to the 37s here as we go. We're carrying a lot of fuel at this point. I think we start with like 4.8 gallons of gas. So starting out pretty heavy. Looks like Thomas definitely had a little bit of a moment there in that corner. Definitely thought I was going to have a better opportunity to get alongside of him. Ooh, tense, man, tense situation. I love this. Is iRacing. This is what it's all about.
He's still there. Still there.
Yeah, this is. I remember this situation. It certainly wasn't a great situation. I was kind of hoping that I was going to be able to back out a little bit better, and that Thomas was going to kind of, you know, take the corner a little bit, and I was going to be able to just fill in behind him. But unfortunately, that didn't quite happen. I think he was a little timid. I was also a little too timid. Probably should have been a little bit more decisive in my back off. But you know, at the same time, I've got somebody 4/10 behind me. I can't back off too early. It's a tough situation. I think that's a very common situation we find ourselves in. None of us are professionals, right? So we're trying to figure this out, trying to be respectful, but also, hey, we're racing, right? So trying to find a way to give the position, but not lose too much time in the process. It's a challenge. And I think for me it's an instance where I can learn a little bit from that. But moving forward here, on P5, we've got kind of the typical cast of characters ahead of us, minus Leo. He has some trouble there, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, if you think about where we started the sprint race after lap 1 and where we are, you know, after a couple minutes into the feature, I feel pretty damn good about where we're sitting right now. So sights set on Chad and John, both of which, those guys are super quick, so I'm not sure that we're going to be closing 4.5 seconds on these guys, but stay in front of JR. I am definitely noticing that Nicholas is right behind him at this point, and he's also very quick and one of those guys in the top group, so I fully expect he'll be with us at some point in the future, and at this point I'm hoping that my buddy JR defends like a lion and I can just get away for as long as possible and see if we can stay ahead of Nicholas throughout the course of this race. But this point of the race is kind of where my head's at. I'm not thinking about pit stops yet. Really just trying to get some laps in, and I'm in a great position. Just focus forward and try to stay there.
Fastest lap.
Definitely pleased to see a 37.6 on the board. That was definitely the first lap of the race. We're really kind of in free air, right? Having the opportunity to kind of put down a lap, and yeah, certainly pleased with that one. I think the fastest lap I ran this entire week was somewhere in the neighborhood of like a 37.1. I think I did that in the practice session before the race started. And you know, if that sounds insanely fast, keep note that track temp, it's only 66 degrees, so we are enjoying some pretty ideal conditions. So, you know, as always, especially in this car, the temperature of the track has a massive impact on your lap time. So there were sessions I was running in the upper 70s, and you know, I don't remember exactly, but I was probably struggling to break the 38s, right, or maybe even higher than that. But yeah, so just keep that in mind. Track temps are super important.
Last lap time was at 1:37.78.
Another solid lap there, 37.7. Just trying to be consistent. That's something I've been, you know, mentally thinking about recently, just really mentally, I guess, focusing on. Trying to be consistent. I'm not going to run a 37 flat or a 36.9 like my buddy Leo. Just not. It's not within my range of abilities, right? So I'm going to run mid 37s. Maybe I'll catch some low ones here at some point, but you know, if I can run mid to low 37s pretty consistently over the course of a race and stay clean, I'm going to have great finishes. That's been proven, you know, as we look at the results from this season. You can stay clean, you can be relatively quick, you're going to have a lot of great finishes. So for me, yeah, it's really about consistency. I'd love to find more speed, but I feel like I'm limited with my skill, and that is what it is. It's all good. Try to be decent with racecraft and try to be consistent, and I think that'll take me a long way. So those are kind of my mental focuses at this point, especially at this point in the season. We're about halfway done, so really just trying to be consistent and have good finishes. Little sketchy in turn 1 and turn 2 there, and that becomes a theme in the next couple laps of this race. My times are looking great, right? 37.4, that feels fantastic to me. Race pace, being in that space is definitely solid. You know, but I'm starting to, I'll have a couple instances in a couple corners where maybe I push it a little too hard. I think the tires get a little overheated. And that's a slope, right? It's the thing where you have a couple of those and it just kind of snowballs on itself. I'm 1.3 up on JR. I'm 2.6 up on Nicholas at this point.
Braking, make sure you leave the corner.
You know, definitely feeling good about, you know, the lap times that I'm putting in. The consistency feels really good, but there'll be a couple mistakes here that are kind of micro mistakes, but they compound, and I feel like I get to a place over the next couple laps where the tires get a little too hot, a little too much input, like right through the hairpin. So yeah, that does impact the way that I approach the pit stops in the next couple laps, and yeah.
Just done a
little too deep into that one. Worked out. Might have overslowed a touch too much as a result, but yeah, I felt like I went a touch too deep into the final chicane there. Lap time shows it. You know, 38 flat. Definitely had a little too much going on in that lap. Scrubbed a little time. You can see the gaps with the guys behind me. Now it's 1.0, 1.8. Couple tenths. I mean, it makes a massive difference with a group of guys that are as tightly composed as we are.
The gap behind is now 1.2 seconds. Okay, Chris, you've used half your fuel.
So I'm keeping tabs on the gap with JR and Nicholas at this point. A little less so looking forward. Not sure that that's the right approach, but that's just kind of where I'm sitting at this point. You can see obviously a lot of correction there into turn one. But I'm paying attention to their gap. I'm really hoping they battle a little bit. Like I said, it'd be cool to see GR defend. Certainly help me out. You know, definitely had a nice lap there, 37.5. Certainly take that after a 38 flat, especially. But yeah, like I mentioned, a couple mistakes that compound, and I think, you know, a little bit of overheating. That's going to happen a lot more as we move forward here in the race, and we get a lot closer to these the pit stops. And it certainly influences my decision on when I go in. Overshot the start of that sequence there, unfortunately. It didn't hurt too much, but apex was certainly lava. Much better hairpin than most of the corners I think that I've had there. Hard to see in the VR view, but the delta is improving in this third sector on this lap. You always see me kind of looking down and to the left a little bit. It's subtle, but if you really look for it, you'll notice it quite often. I'm very often looking at my sector deltas. I used to run the giant green or red, I guess depends on how your lap is going, bar at the top of the screen. But once I went to VR, it just you know, I really prefer the realism as much as I can get it, right? So I'd love to turn off even the big reverse, the rear reverse, the big rear view bar there at the top. Unfortunately, it is so useful; it's pretty difficult to actually do without. But really try to put everything else down into the cockpit so that you're not seeing it, you know, as part of like the environment or anything. Turned off it's kind of as much as I could get away with, you know, and still kind of be effective. But you see me often looking down at the session lap, just trying to get a feel for how I'm doing with each sector, and really kind of analyzing that throughout the course of the race. Did I take the hairpin really well there, or whatever, and how can I adjust lap to lap to improve? Certainly do a lot more of that in practice, but I'm also very curious in the race. Just want to keep those times as close as possible to be consistent. So if you notice there, Nicholas put a move on JR into the hairpin, which I was hoping that was going to take a little longer. He's definitely going to be unleashed at this point, track me down. I don't know what his lap times are, but he's probably running a couple tenths a lap faster than me. So he should be with us pretty shortly is kind of the expectation. And I know we're getting close to pit stop, so you guys aren't going to see it, but you know, I have a button on my steering wheel where I can pop up kind of standings and fuel and all sorts of pieces of information, and that shows up basically where the steering wheel is, slightly angled for me, so it's easier to see when I look down. You may notice my head go down a little bit a few times, straight down, and that's what I'm looking at, trying to get a feel for like how many laps until I have to pit and things like that, so I can plan it out a little bit. Also keeping in mind that the pit entry here at Montreal is certainly unique. As you go to that final chicane, if you go into the pit, you're blowing through the braking zone, so you really can't do that effectively if you have somebody directly in front of you. So that's certainly also part of my thinking. I'd prefer to make my pit stop while I'm in front of Nicholas if possible, and knowing that he's going to catch me up pretty quick, as he's pretty much already there, it's within half a second. And I also feel like at this point it's too early to pit, but I definitely considered it. You can see me looking down now and looking at the fuel, just making sure. Again, been out of the car for 2 weeks, and I've changed some different things for the Daytona 24, just making sure that all of my auto like tire change and stuff is turned off and all those things. So lots going on in my head, lots going on in the cockpit right now, kind of thinking about pits, trying to make sure I'm prepared to be efficient with that. But putting in some good lap times, 37.5, 37.8, 37.4, 37.7, you know, pretty solid. Another little mistake there, much bigger one right there on the correction. Fortunately going to open the door for Nicholas.
Still there.
In hindsight, I wish I had just let him go by.
Still there.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake on my part. I made a big mistake in turn 2. He was able to get, you know, alongside of me. I should have frankly just backed out and just tucked in behind him. As a result, you know, now we've got JR's on our tail, and we lost the position anyway, right? So would have been smarter to just lift for half a second, let him get by, and just tuck in and go. Instead, we both lost probably half a second. So now that Nicholas is in front, it changes the game. I thought I had a great opportunity to get past him right here. I had a much better chicane than he did. Unfortunately, I'm on the outside. So I brake pretty hard. He does too. Unfortunately, he misses his braking mark. And man, thank God for VR. I was able to see that and, you know, stay to his side. To his credit, he did reach out to me after. He was like, "Hey man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, you know, push you wide." And obviously, I know he didn't mean to do that. So
Left side.
all good, man. Great racing. And even in this case, I'm like, I gotta run. I gotta take it. And yeah, he was able to complete an overtake here on Nicholas going into that final chicane. That felt fantastic. And even watching it back, man, that's a pretty cool sequence of corners there. Great racing. And you can look at that time delta, 39.5. We lost a ton of time.
On your right.
Mistakes, overtakes, turn 3. Let's see if we learned something this time going into turn 3.
Still there.
Oh, look at that. Smart boy. Lifted, let him go. Saved a lot of time. Saved much more time there. Very smart. So yeah, you know, for half a second there, my mentality went from, well, now I'm not going to have to pit or go into the pits directly behind Nicholas. I made the overtake, so I'm going to be able to control that. And then a couple corners later, I'm behind him again. So mindset goes right back to, okay, how are we going to execute this pit stop when I'm, you know, 3/10 off my guy going into the final corner? That's going to be a challenge at best. So keeping the pressure on, trying to stay in his draft, and just see where the race takes us. Nice, very nice exit there at the hairpin with the draft. Doesn't look like we're going to be able to get much of a move on him, but certainly going to try to put the pressure on at all times.
5 minutes of fuel remaining.
Looking down a little bit now. See, I've probably got my my overlay up so I can see the fuel situation. Only got a couple laps until we have to pit. And I remember that very vividly because I noticed that his braking marker seemed quite late. So he very smartly did not try to take that corner, but instead dove into the pits to do his pit stop. So I remember this moment very vividly. I very specifically put my head down and was like, I'm gonna put the best possible lap in. I'm pitting next lap. I said that immediately. I'm going in next. I don't want to take a chance to be behind somebody again. I'm going to bust my ass and I'm going to give it the best possible opportunity to be in front of him after these pit stops. So I'm just going to put the best lap in I can get. So I really try to put my head down and just nail every exit and just put in a banger of a lap. So that's where my head's at right here, trying to get everything I can. And I think I'm doing a solid job. I was kind of paying attention to my delta, the JR. That was growing a touch. I mean, I was just going for it. Unfortunately, we're not going to see the lap time, but
you're pulling away from the guy behind. The gap's now
because we're going to dive into the pit, so we're not going to get a great lap out of it. But I felt like I was rolling.
The leader, Decker,
definitely overshot the hairpin a little bit there, but yeah, we were 3/10 up in the second sector, which is massive. Checking everything and the overlays one final time, making sure nobody's super close behind me, and we were just flying into the pits. I think we cut that about as close as possible at 50. Pit stop, the actual stall's at the very end here, so no idea where Mass is. I can see it now with you know, the benefit of watching it with you guys, but in the moment I didn't know where he was. And I didn't even get a great exit out of the pit stall. Second gear, because you're immediately going to be on the rev limiter otherwise, and rolling. I did look over and I saw he was 0.2, and I thought, oh, this is going to be super close, and I kind of remembered, oh yeah, turn 1, turn 2. So you can see we're about a second and a half up on Nicholas after the pit stops, which I'm elated at this point, quite honestly. So to be ahead of him after the pit stop, feeling great. I did notice quickly that JR is only a couple seconds ahead of us, so something must have happened to him. I think he spun. Unfortunate for JR, so he'll yeah, certainly be well behind both of us after the pit stop cycle through as a result. So I think at this point we're sitting about P4 on the board. Once we all cycle through, JR's got a pit. I'm pretty certain that Decker, John and Chad have also all pitted. So at this point, I think we're sitting P4, maybe P5. We'll see when we come through. And this race has really just gone by so much faster than I expected it to. I was thinking about it before the race started. You know, I'd been away for a little bit.
We think P4's gone off in.
This was a terrifying moment. Look in the rear view. Unfortunately, Nicholas gets collected in that incident too. I noticed it pretty early. I was thankful that I did because I was able to really come out of the throttle before I might normally, and not just wash right up into the car. So certainly thankful for that. Felt terrible for Nicholas. Yeah, not a great way to end your race.
Looks like P5's gone off in center.
Hey Jason, pass, I got damage.
So at this point, you know, mindset has truly shifted forward. There's not a whole lot of Danger from behind. I'm up on Jason by 7.5 seconds. He is extremely quick. He will certainly make progress, but I didn't think he was going to close that gap
1.3 seconds.
without quite a large mistake on my part. So yeah. Hope I'm pronouncing Gabrielle correctly. But you know, he's a new driver, so I didn't really know what to expect. His pace was obviously good if he's sitting P3 by the end of this race. Mindset was, let me just do everything I possibly can to catch him. We've got, let's see, somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 13 to 15 minutes left in the race. So really just wanted to do everything I could to get in his draft, see what happens. Maybe I could put some pressure on him, make a mistake, and just see where we finish. But sitting P4, I mean, after very minimal practice, away for a week and a half or two, feeling phenomenal. You know, especially after the lap 1 of the sprint race, spinning out into turn 1 like a dummy. Feeling great about where I'm sitting. So I would have been thrilled with P4, but you know, a podium is right in front of us.
Chris,
so
lap times are pretty consistent.
everything I can do, I'm going to try to get there. I will say there was a moment at this point in the race where I remember thinking to myself, you could just slow down a touch, not push it too hard, finish P4. And that sounds fantastic. And I very quickly said, you know what, F it, I'm just going to go 100% and I'm going to try to finish P3. And if it doesn't work out, so be it, but I'd rather push and see what we can make out of it. So that was the mindset moving forward. I'm going for it. Getting a little bit sketchy at times, sending it through a couple of these corners, but trying to close up that gap. He's opened it up a touch, 1.7, but still pushing.
You've got 10 minutes left, 10 minutes to go.
Jason's closed it up a touch, got about a second on me in those last couple laps. 10 minutes to go. I still felt pretty confident that he was going to be able to close it all the way up. The race was definitely in front of me, but always keeping an eye on those relatives. You never know.
The gap ahead is now 1.9. That was 138.00.
really do love this part of the race where the job is mostly done. You've got one focus ahead. Everything else is behind you. Pit stop's done. The chaos of the start is over. The gap, the field is pretty well spread out. Everybody's in their gaps, and you've got one singular focus. And for me, luckily, it's trying to track somebody down instead of trying to stay ahead of somebody necessarily. So, I've taken a couple tenths out of the gap in the last lap or so, and feeling a little bit more confident. And the funny thing about that for me is, every tenth that I see that thing goes down, just the more I want it. The harder I want to push, the more I want to execute. So feeling more confident with every tenth that comes away. So just pushing, trying to make it happen. Down to about a second. Should be sniffing that draft at any point now. Really trying to focus on having a good exit here so we can get into his draft going towards the hairpin. We are right there. Phenomenal hairpin for me. Definitely within the draft at this point. Being within a second, you're going to suck up to him pretty good, especially with some of the long straights of this track. So at this point, I'm thinking the race is on. The race is on. I should be pretty much on his gearbox by the end of this corner, maybe into turn 1. Close enough to be in the fight. So again, new driver, don't really know his style. Don't know if he knows how we race, right? Like, no dive bombs, no shenanigans necessarily, so kind of an unknown quantity. Just kind of want to race, be conservative around him to start. Got plenty of time to try to make a move.
Still clear, right?
Just put in a phenomenal lap at a 37.3, so feeling good on the gearbox, and now I'm just trying to be methodical and try to find the right spot to make a move. He goes a little wide there. I thought he might have touched the wall, but he didn't, and it didn't quite have the run I was hoping for. So feeling like I've got time. I'm in the draft. I was trying to take a slightly different line in that corner to make a run, which obviously I get.
Still there.
Now you feel like you're playing chicken sometimes. You just don't know what people are going to do.
Clear left.
He backed out, which I thought to myself, okay, cool.
Done, good pass.
Respect that. Was able to make a good overtake, sitting P3. When this started, I didn't think I was going to close the gap. I was about 2 seconds at one point. I thought, man, I'm just happy to be here. So didn't know if he was going to send it. Again, trying to feel out a new guy to the league. So a little unsure of how to drive it. But yeah, man, he raced super clean, and as you'll see, he raced super clean throughout the rest of these laps. And we had a good little battle to the end.
They're faster than us into Senna.
Trying to stay clean, trying to put in a couple finishing laps here to win this, or to get a podium in this race. Feels like a win sometimes, sitting P3, P4 with the group of people that are in these races. But yeah, podiums are amazing. Top 5s are fantastic. So feeling like I'm in a good spot. Really just trying to keep it clean, stay ahead. Don't want my times to fall off.
In front is now 15 seconds.
And I don't know why he's telling me this. There's minutes to go in this race. It doesn't matter, Jim. And I'm actually saying this to him in real time too. Like, why are you telling me this? And it's funny how I feel that way even watching it back. Like, Jim, shut up.
You've got 1 gallon left.
A little overslowed there in the chicane. I was kind of looking up to get a feel. She was, closing the gap a little bit. Not quite, not as direct. A little too hard into the hairpin again. Killing some tenths. certainly felt like the move, you know, for him was going to be going into the final chicane here, the wall of champions, if you will. So always kind of looking up going in for these long straights to see where his car is. And man, I gotta say that
On your right.
in the moment that really shook me up. So he started coming down the straight, you know, looking inside. Not that he was going to make the move necessarily.
Hold your clear right.
I think he was just showing me, or you know, whatever, trying to get some visibility for himself, whatever it was.
Defend your position.
And then that definitely screwed me up mentally going into the chicane. I missed the first apex again, like lava, but he also kind of came out. He wasn't trying to make the move, and you'll see as we at the very end of the race, we'll look at that. He was definitely not trying to make the move. But let's look at this. I felt like I had a phenomenal run here. Fortunately, I got into the back of him, and it sucks. In the moment I thought he might have hit his brakes a little too hard or a little too early. You'll see the replay here in a few minutes at the end of the race. That's not at all how I want to pass somebody. So I slowed down. I let him get by. Unfortunately, Jason also got both of us in the process. But that's not how I want to pass anybody. So I stopped to let him get by. He's clearly got something going on. I stayed slow. I was going to let him stay ahead, but then I thought he's got some damage of some kind, so I'm just going to go on. So super unfortunate, man. I was able to track him down. We had a pretty good battle. It was very clean on both sides. I had a really good run going into, I think, his turn 5. And I think, in the moment I definitely thought that he broke a little early or maybe a little hard. I think with the replay being something you can look at, I think I missed my braking point by meters. I mean, it was so tight. You'll see it though here once we get to the end of the race. So I was kind of keeping an eye on the delta, because in my mind I'm thinking, honestly, if it's super close, I'm going to let him pass me at the very end, because again, that's not at all how I want to pass anybody at all, much less in our league race. So felt super bad about that. It's his first race in our league, and here I am, taking him out from behind. Just felt bad about it. And of course, I messaged him after and apologized profusely. But yeah, with 3-second gap, I thought there's clearly something broken there, and you'll see a little bit more once I show the replay about how that went down. So yeah, it's gonna finish this way. We're gonna finish P4. Honestly, great drive. Like, I was very happy with the result. Very happy with, again, with the context being starting the sprint race the way that it did, being at the very back, after turn 2, basically in the sprint race, to coming all the way back and finishing P4 in the race and the feature. I mean, that's great. Coulda, shoulda, been a P3, which is obviously even better. Like I said, I'm not gonna take a position that way, or I'm not gonna try to. And if I have an opportunity to give it back, I'm certainly gonna try to do that, because I think that's the right thing to do. But
we're running on fumes, mate.
Yeah, either way, P4. Great way to finish. Missed last week, missed Road Atlanta. Happy to be back, settling in for the rest of the season, and see if we can keep these finishes up. I think we're currently 4th in standings overall, so I'd love to finish top 5. I think that would be a phenomenal result for me. So yeah, great race. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Let's check out this incident. So we went all the way back to the Wall of Champions to kind of show how I missed that apex so poorly, and he's had such a great drive off of that. And that's kind of how that overtake went down there. I'm going to fast forward it here and just kind of show you me missing that braking mark, unfortunately. So I had a great run, but wasn't able to quite get beside, and then I think I started my braking a little too far after that wall, unfortunately. So you see me stop, and I go super slow. If you look, you see him hit the corner of that, and I think that's where he caught the some damage on his right or his left rear. So I think that's why he got screwed up for the end of the race. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one.